This is not easy to film. It is a video that I've been putting off making for a really long time, but I feel like it's important to share. So here goes. I am Australian. I am Italian, and for most of my life I didn't feel like I fully belonged to either nationality. I was born and raised in Australia and named after my Italian nonno, which is like saying Michael. For most of my life I didn't speak a word of Italian. I'd say to myself, I'm Italian, but I can't speak it. And every time I said it, it hurt, because it wasn't just about the language, it was about my heritage, my identity, about my family, about feeling like I had failed someone really special to me. So this is my story about how and why I wanted to learn Italian, and what all of this really means, and this limbo that I feel stuck in between being Australian and being of Italian heritage. It all starts with my name. I'm named after my nonno, Michele. So it's written with one L, but because I was born in Australia, si pronuncia Michel. So when I went to visit my nonno growing up, he didn't speak English and I didn't speak Italian or his dialect, and there was no real verbal communication. You know, he'd cuddle me, he'd, pinch my cheeks, he'd do like these giochi di prestigio where he'd like hide his, make his finger disappear like this and do like these magic tricks. I didn't know how it worked, but I was mesmerized. And just by his interaction with me, I understood that, he loved me, he cared for me, and we had this natural bond. But we didn't have that verbal communication, something that I felt really limited by. And then when we'd leave, he'd sneak money into my hand every time we left the house. Like, I just adored him. Like, he was just such a warm character. And because I couldn't communicate with him, my dad had to play translator. And I felt really embarrassed, even at a young age. Like, I was like 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And I'd have to ask my dad, what is he saying? Like, I don't understand. And I felt embarrassed at that age already. So many years went past. I was about 16 when he passed away, so I was in high school. I just remember, like, it was just like a light bulb moment. It was a flick of a switch. It was just that moment where I'm just like, I became serious. Like, I wanted to learn Italian. That was like the decisive moment. I felt like I had missed my chance. Like, I never got to speak to my nonno, the one that I'm named after, the one that I carry his name. Like, I don't have any brothers. Like, I'm carrying his name and his heritage and his legacy. And yet I never had a proper conversation with him. I'm Italian, but I can't speak Italian. And that was the turning point. So I did what most people did, and I went to a bookshop, because we didn't have podcasts or YouTube and the way that we can learn Italian or languages now. So I went to a bookstore and I went to the language section and I picked up a travel phrase book, a tiny little book that sort of changed everything. Well, it took me, down this pathway. But I soon realized that, none of this is giving me much that I could understand. It was all just like, here's some phrases, go and memorize it. But it didn't explain the why. Like, it didn't explain what the gender was, how it works, why some words end in O and A and I and E. But that was like the first stepping stone. That is when I decided that I wanted to take it more seriously. I wanted a more structured way of learning Italian. So I started going to Italian film festivals. I joined language courses, ones that didn't have enough students to go to the next level, so I'd try a different school, and it just I started to build momentum that way. And I ended up going to 3 different language schools 3 times a week, and then outside of that, supplementing it by going to the Italian Film Festival in Melbourne. This is where I was living at the time, that's where I'm from, listening to music like Tiziano Ferro on my iPod, because that's what we had back then. I'd want to go to Italian restaurants and sit near the kitchen so I could hear the staff speak. And use it as an opportunity to order my food in Italian and have some banter with the waiters. I would listen to the Rete Italia radio station, because we have such a big community of Italians in Melbourne. So long story short, I became obsessed. Like, this was in my 20s. And then I wanted to take things even further. Like, I'd reached like a B1 level. And I was like, right, how do I get to that next step? Like, I'm doing everything that I could in Australia to learn the language and surround myself in the language. And I wanted more. This is when I really felt like a disconnect between my life in Australia and the life I wanted to experience in Italy, to see what would fit or suit me better. That was when I said to my dad, look, I really want to move to Italy. And I was scared because, I'd been working in a corporate job. Everything was going really well. This was, 3 or 4 years into my career in Australia, but I was ready for a change. But my dad fully supported it. So I ended up moving to Italy using different visas in order to get there. And I started to experience firsthand that dolce vita. Now it sounds cliche, but I actually finally understood what that meant. Because in Australia, it was all about, your job, climbing the corporate ladder, getting a pay rise and all of this stuff. But as soon as I moved to Italy, I got a job doing the exact same thing I was doing in Australia. I was working in the ghetto ebraico in a web company, which I was doing in Australia, a web design company. And the focus was never on climbing the corporate ladder or getting a pay rise. When I was out with friends, we'd be talking about, where are we going for an aperitivo tonight? Everything was like planned on the day, never like weeks or days or months ahead. Everything was just like you would plan it per day. The focus was always on like your social life and personal relationships. I had 3 incredible years of sunshine, aperitivi, learning the language, the culture, the history, and learning like real human connections with people that I started to form because I could speak Italian. Now, I still wasn't perfect in Italian, but it didn't matter because they were able to communicate with me. I could understand more than I could say, and I was slowly getting better because of them. No one cared about job titles or climbing the corporate ladder. We all talked about, going out to dinner, about love, about life, about experiencing the new, bar that was opening up on like a rooftop terrace in Rome. Like it was just such a different shift and a different pace of life. And that really is what La Dolce Vita is all about, just enjoying a different pace. But after 3 years, reality kicked in, and it kicked in hard. Even though my dad is Italian, so he was born in Italy and he became naturalized along with the whole rest of the family when they immigrated to Australia. So he lost his citizenship, which means that I couldn't get it. So I had to play the visa game, and I jumped around from different visas, and I ended up being able to live in Italy legally for 3 years. But then after that, I ran out of options. So despite being Italian by blood, I wasn't Italian by law, and this still upsets me quite a bit. My dad was naturalised Australian in the 1950s and lost his right to claim citizenship because he didn't have his right and I couldn't get, Italian passport through him. I felt devastated that I had to make this decision where I had to leave Italy. Like I couldn't live in Italy anymore. And I had moved there with the intention that I'm going to Italy and I'm going to stay there indefinitely. And 3 years in, it just felt like a bit of a slap in the face because I had really just started to feel like I was finding my feet, finding my groove, finding myself. And then I had to stop that. And in a whirlwind of playing the visa game again, I had to figure out what my next move was going to be. I wasn't ready to go back to Australia and be that far away from Italy. I wanted to be closer. So because Australia is part of the Commonwealth, I decided that the best option would be to move to London because I could get a visa to be in London. So I thought, right, I'll go to the UK, get a job, get sponsored, get a European passport, then go back to Italy on a European passport. So that was the plan, but then Brexit happened. So that's when everything changed again. So I moved to London, but then I felt like I was taking a step back at the same time, even though, or maybe like a side step, because I wasn't back in Australia, but I was in London, a place that I didn't have a real connection with. I missed that daily challenge of learning the language, improving my Italian, learning more about the culture, exploring Italy in general, because every region is so different from the next. But it was a year after moving to the UK that I really felt like I was missing something. Not physically, but emotionally, culturally, linguistically. Like I wasn't challenged in the same way as I was when I was living in Italy. And that was when I really started to, I can't think of another word other than to yearn for something more. And that's when I created the Intrepid Guide, so my language learning website for travel, which focuses on teaching you the basics in a language that you can use when you go travel to any of these European destinations that I had visited. So I had wrote and created all these travel guides, but also created the accompanying travel phrase guide because I saw the value and experienced it firsthand, what it's like to Just say a few pleasantries in the local language, and the response that you get is incredible. People's faces light up. They're more willing to help you, to talk to you, to connect with you. And this is what I really wanted to share. And then eventually with the Intrepid Guide, it evolved into me teaching Italian and focusing on traveling in Italy and learning the language to, a basic level and a more advanced level now, to have those more profound experiences, those more authentic experiences, and also to help people like me with Italian heritage that didn't learn it as a child and now want to learn it later in life. And hopefully that you can, I'm the proof that it's never too late to get started, that you're never too old. So when I started teaching Italian, to my surprise, thousands of people like me started to reach out and connect with me and join my courses. It's a community that I never thought that I would officially be a part of, that I could easily connect with other people. But I love it when people reach out and share their stories with me. So if you do have a story similar to mine, or you have any sort of Italian connection or Italian heritage, maybe it's your partner that's Italian, and you're going through the ups and downs and the emotional turmoil and all the wonderful experiences that you have in between, please do share it in the comments, because I read each and every one and I'll respond to you. So yeah, let's keep this community growing, shall we? I've received messages from another person in New York who's also called Michele or Michelle, who was also named after her nonno. And it makes me feel like I'm less alone in the world, because she has a similar story to mine, and I think that's wonderful. And I just hope that me sharing this video, as hard as it is for me to really talk about myself as an Australian and the tall poppy syndrome and all of that awkwardness that we experience, that it helps you in some way to open up and to connect and to reach out. Because at the end of the day, even if we are Italian and we can't speak Italian, we're still Italian in some ways. And also the fact that, like, if you've ever said to yourself, I'm Italian but I can't speak Italian, like, I'm with you in that same boat too, because I've definitely experienced the insecurities that come along with saying that and feeling that. And then as the Intrepid Guide evolved, I decided to create Intrepid Italian with Michelle, which is this channel that you're watching now, where I help people learn Italian using my unique 80-20 method. So in a nutshell, that basically means that we focus on the top 20% of the language that gets used in 80% of the situations that you find yourself in, whether it's for travel or whether it's for a more serious, like you want to have more fluent conversations. At every step of the way in each of my courses, we're focusing on the stuff that you actually need to know and use. Everything is totally self-paced, but then you also get access to me and the community if you have any questions or need any additional support. I started this basically because, learning Italian isn't really about impressing anyone other than yourself. It builds your self-confidence, your self-esteem. You can feel proud of yourself for doing something difficult. But for me, I felt like I finally belonged somewhere. I felt like a disconnect living in Australia. Like, I was Australian, but not fully Australian. But then I go to Italy and I'm not fully Italian either. I feel more Australian there. I definitely feel like I'm stuck in limbo somehow. But either way, when I am in Australia, I can connect in a different way than when I connect when I'm in Italy. And I feel like I've now accepted that different places fulfill different parts of me and my personality and me as an adult, as a human. The hardest part is to just get started, but then I kind of always think of the Nike tagline, just do it. And the way I interpret that is, like, don't overthink it, don't worry about it, just do it. Like, just don't even think about it like ripping off a Band-Aid, like it has to be done. Just rip it off and then you realize, oh, that wasn't so bad after all. And that goes for like daily practice too, when you feel like, oh, I haven't done any Italian this week or today. Just open the book. That's the first thing. Open the book, log into the course, do that first step, get your notebook out. Just make it really simple. Learning Italian and learning any language isn't a destination. I'm still learning English. There are still words that I don't know or phrases I've never heard of before. And Italian is the same. So don't ever feel like that there is this end goal that you're trying to get to, because it is a journey and you just get better and better and better as you do more of it and as you expose yourself more to the language. And there's something else that I want you to know is that it's never too late to learn Italian. I learned it very humbly when I was 16, 17, but I didn't take it seriously until I was in my early 20s. And actually, there are studies now that prove that you're never too old to learn a language. Like, I didn't grow up speaking Italian, yet I learned it as an adult. I'm proof that you don't need to buy into that limiting belief. But learning Italian actually changed everything for me. Not just because I could finally speak to Italians, but it actually changed my direction in life. Like, I left Australia, I moved to Rome, I moved to the UK, and I started, the Intrepid Guide and now Intrepid Italian. And here I am now sharing my story with you. And because I learned Italian, I finally started to understand and learn more about myself. Now, every time I learned a new phrase, every verb that I mastered, every time I stumbled and got back up again, I wasn't just learning a language, I was reconnecting with my roots, with my nonno, with the person I was always meant to be but didn't feel like I could properly achieve or reach that. And it might sound a little bit corny, but like every lesson that I write and every video that I film, including this one, I feel like my nonno is somehow watching over me and giving his tick of approval or just cheering me on in some way. And maybe that's just it, right? Maybe this journey of learning Italian isn't about learning Italian itself, but it's about learning more about yourself and finding your way back home, in a sense, back to your roots, back to your heritage. What do you think? So if you're ready to make the first step, or if you've already started learning Italian, then I wish you all the best, and know that I'm here cheering you on, because this isn't just about the grammar and vocabulary. It is about your identity, about belonging, about your legacy, and you. You are exactly where you need to be. If you're watching this video, then I feel like you're on the right track. Whether you're learning Italian for your nonno, for your children, your next trip, or for yourself, just know this, that you belong here, that this is just the beginning for you. And if any of this resonated with you, please do let me know in the comments. I would love to hear your story. Ciao.